Okay, it looks like you're recording and live on YouTube.
It's not ready for you.
Oh.
Yep, you're good to go.
Good to go. Okay. All right. Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order. And the very first thing, as usual, is a 10-minute time for public comment. Celeste, do we have anybody who's on YouTube trying to comment?
No.
Okay. And am I missing anybody on the screen who would like to comment? All right. Well, for the benefit of those who are at least on YouTube, if you have a comment later on, we often try to accommodate them. We just don't guarantee that we'll take time. And then there's another 10-minute comment period at the end. All right.
But you also will occasionally acknowledge people during a discussion.
Right. That's what I meant. Yeah. Okay. Would the vice chair mind reading the board goals?
The goal number 1, governance. The board will implement a governance model that looks to the future and fosters a high level of effectiveness and efficiency. Goal 2, community engagement. The board will use a proactive approach to community engagement. Goal 3, equity. The board will use their operational definition of equity as an overarching guide in policy development and decision-making. Goal 4, legislative action. The board will keep abreast of legislative issues and take action when needed to support the district.
Thank you. It looks like this meeting numbers 2 and 4 are particularly relevant. All right, we have 2 items on the consent agenda. One is
I move the consent agenda.
Okay, moved by Dick. Is there a second? Someone want to second the consent agenda? Okay, Melanie.
Ben actually had his hand up first.
Well, I saw Melanie, so we'll count for her. All right. Just a reminder: if there's anything on the consent agenda you want to discuss, you should ask to have it done now. Otherwise, we will just vote without discussion. Don't see anybody wanting to discuss either of the items. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you, Deb. Anybody opposed, please raise your hand. All right, that appears to pass unanimously then. So let's go into financial planning and, well, actually the heading is financial planning and budgeting, but it isn't exactly. The first item is a discussion about the repercussions of Act 48. And in your packet is some information about Act 48. Randy, do you want to add anything about the way you see that affecting us?
Well, I just wanted you, you see the recommendation and then you see the act following it. And I am going to assume, like I always do, that you've read through this. This is the legislation that was just signed yesterday by the governor. So it went into effect yesterday, allowing any municipality, for us, school district, to move your annual meeting date to a date later in 2021, and to mail ballots to all members of the school district. And I think what's important on that is that you need to understand that we represent 9 towns. You as a board are one entity. So you either need to make a decision when we get to that to mail or not to mail, but you can't piecemeal mail, right? You can't choose to mail to 5 towns and not choose to mail. You're either mailing or you're not mailing. And I think that's an important point for you to know.
Yep.
And then I think the other key piece that's important to know is that the legislation, clearly says that the municipal clerk shall cooperate with and assist school districts and other incorporated districts with the administration of annual district meetings and budget votes. So even if a town has decided to hold their election at a date in the future past March 2nd, and you as a board decide that your election date, your meeting is still on March 2nd, the town clerks need to assist you in the election process, including mailing of the ballots if that's what you decide to do. So 2 weeks ago, we didn't have a lot of these details. And when I said to you it would be complicated, many of the things that were confusing and very complicated to think about at the time have been resolved through some of the communication here. So I think those are the highlights I wanted to say. I want to also introduce Dina Atwood. For those of you who don't know, she's our attorney for the district. And when we met a couple weeks ago, I'd said, let's bring Dina just in case we end up in some conversations I wanted to seek some legal advice for. So there's a discussion just about the act itself, about the legislation itself, but then we'll follow into deciding when do you want to actually hold your election, and then following that, do you want to or not want to mail your ballots? Okay, so that's sort of the scope of the three pieces. And probably if we can start by just talking about the legislation, then moving into the date, and then moving into the mailing. Okay, it's hard to keep them separate, but that's how I'd recommend we approach this.
Yes, before we have any motions, let's just devote.
I wasn't motioning, I was questioning.
Let's just devote some time to any questions to either Dina or Randy about what the situation is before we get into specifics about what we're going to do. Dick?
Just because in Londonderry and I know Weston, both of those two towns are actively pursuing a postponed sometime in May ballot. And both clerks have indicated that they are absolutely willing to cooperate in every way that is appropriate to facilitate the election during the time that all the rest of the towns seem to be doing it, which is March 2nd.
Yeah, so I'll add to that. I did meet last Monday with almost all the town clerks. Peru was not there, but everybody else was, because I wanted to talk through the whole situation with them and find out what towns are thinking. To Dick's point, a week ago, it was the same information where London and Weston were thinking about postponing. At that time, they were thinking about it. All the other towns plan on holding their elections on March 2nd. And 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 of those 7 towns plan on mailing their ballots to their constituents. Peru was not at the meeting, and I'm not sure if they were planning on mailing or not. And Anita Sheldon from Manchester reached out to me yesterday wanting to know sort of kind of where I thought you might be heading. They are all expecting an email from me tomorrow, all the town clerks, letting them know what you decide tonight. Okay.
Thank you. Jane, go ahead.
So I can tell you what I know thus far. They sent out a letter. Peru sent out a letter to its constituents saying that there's going to be an informational meeting on the 1st. In-person voting will happen on March 2nd, but they're in the letter, they have that you can call the town hall to request a mail-in ballot. I had planned on, after tonight's meeting, to go to the town hall tomorrow to talk to them about, but I'm interested to hear what we come up with tonight about the decision, because I figured I was going to need to talk to them then about how this is all going to sync with the school, the school voting.
Anybody else have any information or questions?
No, I just, this is Deb. I just have a question. So it is true that we all need to do the same thing. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. As a school district, we need to do everything that we do on the same date and in the same way. Is that pretty much it?
We also have to have a conversation if you have directors who are elected at large, especially if you've got 2 towns who think they're going to do it in May. But yes, so if you have 5 out of 7 of your towns who are saying that they would like to take the checklist and mail a ballot to every single person on the checklist, Your problem is you have to make sure that for your constituents who are 9 towns, am I right?
Mhm.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
9 towns, that everybody has the same equal access. And so if that's why you have to make a decision, if you're going to send out all of your ballots, all of you are going to have to do that.
Okay.
You can't just have 1 town or 5 out of the 9 decide to do it, and then the remaining 4 decide we'll only do it like a regular absentee ballot if somebody calls up and requests. Otherwise, we expect them to be at the polls. You can't have that differentiation between your districts.
I think
Bob
the
Brown,
other,
did you have a question? No, Bob's hand was up, but it wasn't a question. Okay. And Dina, one thing that came up earlier today in the different discussion, if we were hypothetically to decide that we were going to conduct the election on the normal day, but not mail ballots to everyone, we could theoretically do that, right, as far as legality goes, but it might not be the best idea because it would confuse people who live in the towns that are going to mail out their own ballots to everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a rational way of looking at it. I mean, here's the upside. The upside is that there is money that is supposed to be there to reimburse you for if you do incur these costs. I think there's no process that's outlined from the Secretary of State's office right now. The last I heard from Will Senning was, tell your clients save their receipts, but we're going to trust that they pay for everything, right? But yeah, you're right. I think it has the potential for confusing people, right? If everybody is getting their ballot mailed to them for their town vote, and then we're saying to them, you can then request an absentee ballot for the school vote, or you show up to a poll, that may be confusing to people. But regardless of which way it gets done, there is always going to have to be a poll site that is open in the town, right? But it may be confusing to do it that way. I think, there's a responsibility under Title 16 that the town clerk is supposed to give your school district clerk the checklists. And they, at this point, after having gone through, COVID voting last spring and in November, they should have pretty clean checklists. If you make the decision that you're going to be doing the mailing out all of the ballots. That's my take. Clearly, it's something that you all need to decide, but everybody is going to have to do the same way.
Thank you. Other questions, comments about the general situation? Mark, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think that it might, and I like the idea of the ballot being mailed, but I do believe that it's going to take a pretty decent communication effort to have people know to look for that ballot, because that is not a common piece of mail this time of year. So I think it's really important that you get the message out there early and frequently that that is going to be a method of voting in all districts, if that's the method of choice.
I think it will help us if at this point we've got like 6 of the towns who are also planning on mailing, and we're able to put it in one packet. I think that will be a lot easier for voters to understand. I think the biggest focus in the area that I'm concerned about is, are the ones that are postponing their date, and then the school district election is a different day. I think those are the towns in which there's going to be the most confusion for the voters. And so we'll want to think about how do we make sure that we are communicating as clearly as we can with people.
So on those, Randy, the ones that are in May, is that if you have open board of director seats that are in that.
But we have our own ballot. Like, we'll have our own ballot and our own election. Our election will be done on the 2nd.
With the exception of your board of director open.
No, not even with that exception, at least according to the Secretary of State's conference last week.
Yeah, we are our own municipality.
So it's an
So-
interesting thing whether or not Will understood from the 13th. I did hear what Will said on the 13th, and I think it's a point of clarification from Will. Union school districts are a little bit different in terms of your board of director votes are typically done at the town annual meeting, are they not, Richard?
No.
No,
They're done at your
our
meeting?
election is every seat that is open is voted on by every single voter in the entire district.
You do it at large. Thank you. That was the other, okay, so you're doing it at large. Oh, geez. Yeah, so you're gonna have to do it where those people are gonna have to,
And there are approximately 9 seats that are being voted on this time.
so Londonderry and Weston are gonna have to do it. If it's at large, they're gonna have to do it.
Well,
On
the
whatever date you pick.
the difficulty is that the open seats, people need to nominate, and there are people like John Wilson who occupied an open seat, and he took the position of Georgina. Because he was replaced during this year, needs to have that appointment confirmed if he chooses to run. And Lindsay, I think, or actually it's Lee is also a part of that, and I think Alex, I think you're this year as well. So those are the 3 what I'll call seats that can be nominated from Manchester or Danby or Dorset or Manchester. Others are up, and it turns out that both Deb in Weston and I in Londonderry, and I'm not sure who else, but there were 5 of those town-specific seats whose term is up and therefore eligible for a new 3-year seat. So the ballot will contain everybody running, and every single town will in fact be on the ballot and vote for all of the people, regardless of where they come from.
So you have some directors who are at large nominated and some who are town specific nominated. So here's the upside. The upside is that all you have to do if you're interested in running for one of those positions is to fill out the candidate consent form. You don't actually have to do the petition.
That's correct.
So that has been removed. That was removed last year as well. So that still exists. So you don't have to go and get everybody to sign, right, the signatures to sign off on it. You do have a time crunch that your candidate consent forms have to be in if you're going to do March. It typically, and let me blow it out for you. Typically, your candidate consent forms would have to be in on January 25th if you're holding your election on March 2nd. You do have now currently the ability to request a waiver or to make a decision to move that off when candidate consent forms are need to be filed by, which is a good thing, but you still have to be able to have them in prior to the 20 days that you need to have your ballots available for the election. Does that make sense?
That's been made clear.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys have all that. Okay, good.
I have a question about the
Jim.
ballot itself. As I remember, I thought that the ballot with all our names on it accompanied the vote to pass the budget on the warrant. Is that true? I mean, is that all part of the same ballot or the same election?
Yes.
It is if you vote for the way it's been described to me, Deb. Yes, you would have everybody. You would be picking
So it would be in the same envelope, with the warrant, and it would all go out at the same time.
So the ballot would also list things like you're requesting the ability to do borrowing before, the tax anticipation note. It would say things like setting the pay for your treasurer, all of those things. So that would all be on one ballot. Your budget would all be on one ballot.
Right. So if we mail them all out and expect them all back on March 2nd, then we're covered for any eventuality.
Yes, as long as we get everything done in the appropriate deadlines, yes.
Well, Jim Salzger has been waiting to say something for quite a while, and then no
I'm
one.
sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just had one question I just thought of tonight, which is, as far as we're supposed to have equal access, does that actually extend to the hours that the polls need to be open in each town?
No.
Okay, good, good. Thank you.
Melanie? You have to unmute.
Sorry, I know. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling very much like there's not a whole lot of options here, right? It's either we mail it to everyone or we don't mail it to anyone and just let people request. And I'd be surprised if anybody thinks, I'm interested in hearing arguments for not mailing it and waiting for requests, only because I feel like that's an extra step that people may or may not take. And there might be confusion as to even, if we don't include it with the people that are getting mailed ballots for the towns, it feels like we would have to at least include a letter that explained that why we haven't included it and how you're supposed to get it. Either way, we're going to have to address the public when they get that ballot.
Yeah.
So, to that point, if we're going to communicate with them, why not just give them the information to go ahead and vote right then and there, rather than making them take a second step, knowing that some towns don't have as much participation in school board voting as they do on municipality voting. This might actually increase that, I feel like, as opposed to hinder it.
Okay. Before we get to specific motions, is there any more general question about what the situation is or comments about it? So I think it sounds like we're just about ready to ask for a motion on the first item on the agenda, which is to set the date. And then the second item will be, are we in fact going to mail ballots to everybody? Dick?
Can't hear you.
You're muted.
I move that we set the date as March 2nd.
Okay, moved by Dick to set the date at March 2nd. Is there a second? Seconded by Jane. Okay. Is there any discussion on setting the date at March 2nd, which is the normal date? Going once, going twice, going three times. Don't see anybody. All right. All those in favor of setting the election date at March 2nd, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you, Deb. Okay, I don't see. Okay. Dave, was your hand up? Dave Chandler? Yes, thank you. Okay. Look, that looks to be unanimous. But let's see. Anybody opposed? Raise your hand. Is anyone abstaining? Raise your hand. Okay, again, that looked like it was unanimous. It is unanimous. All right. So the date is March 2nd. Now we need a motion on whether we are, whether to, either to mail ballots to all voters or not to.
Before you do that, Herb, can I just interject one thing? Your warning is going to need to be approved and posted by the 29th of this month.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that you're going to have to probably do a very quick meeting to approve your warning as well.
That's on this agenda.
Got it here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you have it? Okay, good.
Dick, I think, was next.
I intend to oppose my motion, but I move that we mail ballots.
Okay. And since we have only two alternatives, you know what the other one is. Is there a second to Dick's motion that we mail ballots to everyone? Seconded by Jane, okay, or by Lindsay, whichever's handier. Okay, discussion on that, and I can lead off with one thing, which is that one of our student members, Samantha Stevenson, couldn't be here tonight because she has a conflicting athletic practice, but she did send me an email, and she addressed this issue. She said, if towns are mailing their voting ballots, I think it makes sense for us to mail ours as well. Also, I agree with you that having to request an absentee ballot while receiving a town ballot would be confusing, and I bet many people would not do it. With COVID cases still rising, Many people still are trying to have as little contact with the world as possible, and voting from home is very convenient. I believe that more constituents would send back their ballot in the mail than go vote in person if their other ballot was mailed to them. Thank you. Other discussion on the motion? Dick?
I intend, wait a minute. I intend to oppose in large part because of the discussions that I've had with our town clerk, who's fully prepared to do absolutely all that is required in order to cooperate. But because of the traditional turnout in Londonderry and the fact that a large number of long-term concerns and over the education budget has, with the Floodbrook school system in our town, not created much controversy, nor has it created very many people who chose to comment. And so it turns out that in last year's election, which occurred in the same building, two separate places in that building, over 840 people voted in the presidential primary in person, and only 218, despite the fact that the elections were run simultaneously, worked out to be 218. It's just as our town treasurer pointed out, mail-out ballots have not resulted in our town with much success at all. And so therefore, I know of the confusion, but since our town is used to having a separate vote actually on a separate day, I believe that our town can deal with the lack of a mailed ballot.
Other discussion? Melanie?
John's had his hand up for a minute. John can go first.
Okay, John?
I can't remember, and I'm sorry if this was, I got here a few minutes late, but I can't remember where we're at with the law, and I apologize if this has been said, but do the ballots, can they be commingled now? Because
Yes.
I remember when we first initially, when we merged, they could not be commingled, but has that since changed?
Right, that was solved, I think, 2 years ago, where now the town clerks or the town election officials are allowed to count them and send in the count rather than having to send people all to a central location to count them.
Okay, so can they be returned to, can they be returned to, they have to be returned to the town clerk though, or can they be returned to only one person? Or
They're,
one?
they're returned to the town clerks, and then the town clerks send them to the one person who counts them all together.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Melanie, you had a different question, maybe?
No, I just wanted to remark to Dick, if it's okay, just that, while I totally understand that it does not seem to work in Londonderry, considering that we are talking about all towns with all kids and one board for all. What happens in Londonderry seems to be maybe unique in Londonderry, and I would be surprised if that was the case across the board completely. So because there doesn't seem to be large turnout, doesn't seem like a good, it seems like we'd still be leaving people out in other towns, to me, without sending those ballots out.
Other comments? Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to, I don't have enough data really to speak with authority, but I do know that the time that we have sent out all ballots to all voters in Vermont, we had record turnout, and that, so it's far surpassed anything that happened in the past for our elections. So it does seem that on the large scale, the mailing ballots is getting a higher degree of turnout, but this is not my area of expertise. I just remember that statistic. So anyway, I'm in favor of mailing out.
Other folks on the pros and cons of the motion? I just wanted to remind folks of the conversation that I had with Dina a while ago, which is to the effect that, yes, legally we could do what the motion calls for, but it seems to me, and it seemed to Sam Stevenson, that that would really confuse voters in the towns that do decide to send ballots to everybody if they then didn't get our ballot in the same mail and had to request it separately. Anybody else with a comment on the motion?
Now, Weston, I'll just say for Weston that Weston is going to postpone their town meeting and do all their voting in person when they finally hold their meeting. So this ballot will be a separate vote entirely. And the clerk is happy to do it. She was just mostly concerned about the time and the expense, but she will do it.
And regarding expense, I forget whether it was Randy or Dina that said that there is money that's supposed to cover
Right.
the expense.
It's $2 million that's been assigned to this.
Not all ours, of course, but any other discussion?
John's got his hand up, Herb.
Thank you, John.
I'm just curious if anyone else is. I appreciate Dale or Dick shared his opinion. If anyone else is opposed, it seems to. I don't have a lot of evidence, but it seems more equitable to do the mailings. But you know, I'm just trying to keep an open mind if anyone else has any arguments about why it's not a good idea.
Not seeing any hands on that question.
Okay.
All right, are you ready for the question then? So the motion is by Dick. Celeste, can you restate that motion, please?
The motion is to mail the ballots.
Okay. And the alternative, obviously, is to ask people to ask for absentee ballots the way they always have. So on the motion to mail the ballots, all those in favor of mailing the ballots to everybody, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you, Deb. All those opposed, please raise your hand. That passes with opposition. Thank you. The next item will be to finalize the warning. It's packet page 13.
I move the warning as listed in our packet.
Jim? Is there a second?
Yeah, in the,
Jim, are you seconding that?
oh, yes, please, I'll
Okay.
second it. Yep. Sorry.
And then you want to say something.
Right. No, just that actually it does require a correction that Celeste already has for Dorset in the place of voting in 2 different places.
Yeah, is it the way it's written in there on this, Jim, correct now? That it says the town office?
It should be the town office. Yeah, because the one that I have from the package,
Yeah, so
maybe we have a new package.
she fixed it online. Yep, so the version that we have, the one that's online is accurate.
Okay, great. That's all.
I accept the friendly amendment to
Thank you.
correct 112 Mad Tom Road to the correct town office in Dorset.
Which is what, by the way?
Now, the address is correct, but it says now Dorset School. It should say Dorset Town Office.
No, actually, packet page 15 says Dorset Town Office.
Yeah, it just depends on which version you have. So when
Okay.
it was originally mailed out, it still said Dorset School. It was then updated. So some of you, it may say, so we know that what we're approving is Dorset Town Office at
Okay.
112 Mad Tom Road on both places.
You know, I'm
Other
behind the
discussion?
times. I have an old version, so.
Okay.
I have an old version.
Okay. Is there other discussion on the motion to adopt the warning as stated on packet pages 13 through 15 then? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand then.
Aye.
Thank you, Deb. Anybody opposed, please raise your hand. Anyone abstaining, please raise your hand. Passes unanimously then. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And Dina, you're welcome to stick around, but I think we're done with anything that would involve Act 48.
Great. All right. You all have a great night.
Thank you very much, Tina.
Yep.
Thank you for your help.
Yes, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yes.
Bye.
Okay. All right. Community engagement. Did everybody get an email with the form?
Yes.
I just asked Celeste to send that to you, so I know it didn't come, it came relatively late, but I wanted you to have a chance to see the form before it goes out. And I know the committee has things to say, so I won't say too much other than we're working hard. Bob's keeping this on the forefront of my mind to make sure that we are executing. So community engagement team, you can launch it and then I'll add to anything I feel like I should add on my end.
Okay, who would like to begin? Don't all rush to the front here.
Well, maybe we, Bob and I spoke today. He said that the press release has gone, is about to go out. I mean, yes, let's ask Bob. He can tell you that.
Bob, do you want to bring us up to date on that? I have to unmute.
Yes, the two things have gone out. Randy did an op-ed for the Manchester Journal that will appear this Friday. And we've also did a press release, sent that out to the media, the other newspapers, plus the Manchester Journal and all our towns. We're also scheduling maybe possibly something next week with GNAT, where Randy and maybe a few of the public engagement committee members can participate. So GNAT will be participating as well. So we'll starting Friday, this hits the streets, and Randy's working with the principals to send out an email to all the families, and that'll be done. And I know other people are reaching out to other groups. So let the games begin.
So we said that on Monday, the 25th was the launch. So all of us who have approached select boards and library lists and planning boards and whoever else, that's the day that we will be sending each of them a note saying, here's our survey, thank you very much, and please pass it on. So I've called some of them this week, the ones I had talked to, just telling them it would be coming next week, so they're ready. And then I think we said 3 weeks that it would be out.
Yeah, actually, we're going to make the survey operational on Friday, the 22nd, when Randy's op-ed hits. But then it runs technically through February 15th. So there's 3 full weeks where people can participate. And if we get 2 weeks into it and we see a need to extend it, we can always do that.
Okay. So, but we should all be sure to get it out to our contacts. Well, over this, starting the 22nd, then, right?
Yeah, technically, they can start logging in on the 22nd. Yes.
Okay. Right.
So I am happy to send you the link. What I will do is on Thursday. Yeah. Tomorrow. Yeah. I will send you the link to the survey, and then you can share that link out with whoever your groups are. Because it's a Google form, all the responses will just come together and they will just be, collecting over this 3-week period. So there's nothing else you need to do except share the letter and the link with whoever your groups are and ask them to share it with their constituents.
Right.
Also, one more thing on the link. Celeste is working on the website, so there will be a button or a menu item on the homepage for the link. So it'll be public engagement. People click on that and they go right to the forum. So it'll be on the homepage of the BRSU website.
I do have on the form the ability to only have one response per email address. So that's clicked. So just so you're aware of that as board members, in case somebody says anything to you related to that.
I'm excited. Thank you, Bob, for all the work you've done on this. I think the people that I approach are pleased they're pleased that we're asking them, and I'm beginning to think that just asking them is making a big difference, whether they answer or not. We've reached out to them and shown them that we're interested in what they have to say.
I have a question for the group. Have you folks had a conversation with Alex or with Lindsay about whether they're willing to contact the organizations that were identified in Danby?
No.
Are they, which organizations are you talking about, Herb?
Well, there were, it was on the list of 40 or so organizations. One was, I think, the Danby Planning Commission. One was the Danby Select Board. I think there was
The
probably
library.
third, the library, yeah.
Or is there?
Yeah, I guess we. Go ahead.
I was just gonna
Mel.
ask, are they both from Danby?
Alex and Lindsay are, yes.
Okay.
I think we had sort of when we were compiling that list, we were sort of hoping that we could get all of our select boards involved and our libraries and planning commissions. And we just left them blank, hoping that whatever board member lives in whichever of those towns where we haven't contacted those people, that they would reach out to them in their own towns.
Yeah, and I was just going to jump in and say it's definitely not, it's not too late for us to make a quick phone call to folks and ask them to pass this form along through their, whatever their listserv block email is. That's the super simple, and then offer to say, if anybody wants to have, if there's a group that wants to have a larger conversation, we'd be happy to set something up, and to see what people take us up on. But those conversations, I think, can be really rich for us, as to understanding what our constituents are thinking about. I don't know how many folks will take us up on it. The other thing that I wanted to pitch on that, just along the lines of it's definitely not too late, is to think about, again, part of the push on this is to try to hear from constituents who we don't normally hear from. So if there are groups or organizations that are working with people in our communities who may be less likely to attend a school board meeting or to be keyed into what's going on in schools, this is a great time, actually, during this pandemic time, to use those other channels to reach out to some of those folks. So I definitely sort of encourage thinking about who in your community or what organization in your community might be reaching an audience that might not get this otherwise. So outside of this, parent, school age child group, and whatnot.
Even just neighbors, it doesn't have to be a group, anybody.
Jane, go ahead.
So I have a question, and just wondering if you guys might be able to give me some recommendations on how best to. So for instance, like the Peru Church, it's probably one of the best places for us to outreach in Peru for constituents. However, what I wonder about is how to operationalize, getting the survey to the people that are just from Peru. So does it work that when they do the survey that they just click and it'll register? I don't quite understand how best to approach that. Does that make sense? That I'm just getting feedback from Peru constituents.
So I can speak to that, Jane.
Melanie, go ahead.
Okay.
We specifically decided not to separate the form by town.
Okay.
Because we're trying to look at, because I think we're just trying to go, really along with what our board goals are, is to teach and reach all students from all towns equally. So we, we did talk about that, I think, as a committee, and decided that wasn't important. And we also, not that it's not important, but it wasn't a goal. It wasn't one of the overreaching goals of what we're trying to achieve, for one. And two, we also want people to really trust this process and feel like they have the ability to respond to it privately and without being identified as necessarily who they are, where they're from. We don't want anyone to feel like because they're from Peru, their voice might be counted less. or give them any reason to feel like we might set them aside and say, well, that doesn't matter because they're from here, or this doesn't matter because they're a business owner. So for that, for a couple of reasons, we were not doing that.
So for instance, like just to make sure I understand that feedback, I'm thinking like it might be the easiest because I've already had contact with the minister, waiting for her to give me a call back. We were going to, talk about how best to do this. And I'm thinking just from knowing that she sends out like a newsletter weekly, like with announcements and everything, I'm thinking that maybe it's going to be easiest that I just ask if the survey can go in there. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Right? Okay. Thanks.
Okay, John.
Are we prohibited under law to, thinking of the mailings of the ballot to include like a flyer that with information for the community engagement survey?
Except that it'll be done before then.
Right, the timing.
The February 20. Well, yeah, we have to get
No, we're starting January 22nd.
What's that?
We're starting this Friday.
Yes, and but the survey closes February. Was it
15th.
February 15th.
15th? So 20 days before March 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Dick?
I have found that I've gotten very positive and thoughtful responses from a large number of people when I included that lovely summary of what we were looking for before the survey ever came. If in the data that's being sent around, we could also include that so that it can be replicated. For example, on the community forum, we've got over 4,000 members of the Londonderry Community Forum. I could create that letter and provide the link, and therefore there would be a lot of input that would come. Secondly, I had a number of people concerned that they didn't want to really widely disperse their email. So an awful lot of people that I'm dealing with, I'm sending it to one person, generally the chair of whatever commission or committee it is, and they're dispersing it to their relative people. I think I got about more than 40 people responding to this thing. And I emailed Melanie to that effect. So it would be great if that note that is fairly convincing and fairly explicit could also be advertised as we're unfolding this particular thing. People that I haven't contacted might well respond.
Randy, did you want to say something about that?
I wanted to comment back on John's question. We send a postcard to Taconic and Green. You send a postcard to all of your voters, so we can include the link. There's not going to be enough space for the whole passage, but we can create like put the link in there with like a very brief comment, and that will go to everyone. So that's a little bit of a workaround that goes out a little bit earlier.
Go ahead, John.
Maybe a link and a QR code if possible. That's not going to be accessible to everyone, but just another way to make it easier for people to access a link. People aren't going to enter it all in, but
right. No, we can look at that for sure.
Okay. Jane?
I don't know if this newspaper or place has been contacted, but I'm thinking the Londonderry front porch could also be a good venue. No? Why is that? Dick is saying no.
There are only about 150 people who ever consult that.
Well, 150.
Yeah, but I think I think that it tends to be people who are really active.
Almost all of those are on the Londonderry Community Forum.
Okay, Melanie.
I just said Dick Dale's point about the people you're contacted, and the concern with email sharing. I think it is in the intent of the committee that we're reaching out to community leaders like you suggested and letting those leaders send the email out. It's not that us as board members are, the expectation is not board members are sending this out to 150, 200 people. We're looking to get it to people that have mailing lists that the people on those lists are comfortable with that community leader having that email. And that's it.
Yeah, and libraries are pretty good at that. The Weston Library, she'll just send it out to everybody on, they do a newsletter, a frequent newsletter, and it's well received, so she's going to add it to her newsletter.
Jim and then Jane.
Yeah, just a quick question. Since Randy mentioned that, it's set up so it only accepts one from any email address. I assume though we're not actually collecting that email address, right? Okay.
Yeah, I was going to make that point in a second to say we're not collecting email addresses. So if anybody asks, please assure them we are not collecting that information.
Jane?
Well, I just want to be clear. What my suggestion is about the front porch is not that we send out an individual survey to each person to each email, but that perhaps just the survey gets posted on that website, the email that people do get, and they can decide if they want to click on it then to answer it or not.
Other thoughts? Melanie?
I guess I would just ask, is there any reason not to post it on Front Porch Forum? I know that we have a Front Porch Forum, and I'm sorry for that. There's one in Manchester. We have one down in Sunderland, but it's shared with Sandgate and Arlington. So I don't think I would share it down here in Sunderland, just because it's just more to shuffle through. Even though I know that we did ask people to identify at least that they're part of the TNG. But I guess I don't see any harm really in Londonderry, especially since it probably is pretty specific to Londonderry. It doesn't reach up to Rutland, does it, Jane? Do you know?
The one in Weston, we share it with Ludlow, but I wouldn't put the survey on. I would just write a little blurb that says we're doing a survey. If you live in these towns, go to our website.
I'm willing to post it, but the thing is that the front porch is controlled by the town manager. So I haven't called him and asked. I will call and ask, but it is the most ineffective way of communicating anything around here.
And I suppose Alex and Lee and Lindsay and I should have a conversation about the Mount Tabor and Danby Front Porch Forum, which does seem to be used fairly much.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I know Paul Pierce on the Danby Select Board, so I can talk to him tomorrow. And I'm willing to reach out to the library. I get the Front Porch Forum every day. I find it fairly interesting. I read it every day. I don't really interact very much, but I do read it. I'm not sure about how going about to post on there, but I suppose it's probably pretty simple since people do it all the time.
Yeah. Melanie?
Yeah, Alex, it's pretty easy to even sign up as a school board member there or like an elected official. And then when you do post business for the school, it'll say that you're an elected official, which is nice. And I'm just going to totally put you on the spot. If you're thinking about hitting up the Danby Select Board and library, do you also want to do the planning commission from Danby too? Because that's on our list, and then we'll get that checked off.
Of course, we wouldn't want to take the opportunity away from Lee and Lindsay.
That's true.
Yeah, I guess if I'm going to do two, I might as well hit the trifecta. I don't know anybody on that, but I can figure it out.
Herb, I will also reach out to Lindsay and Sam. I know that Lindsay's on the BBA. She's marked down for students. So I'll send an email out to her tonight and just see if she wants, if she feels good about what she's doing or if there's any hesitation on her part doing that and see if there's anywhere else she wants to hit up.
Lindsay's actually signed into this meeting, but I'm not seeing her hand up.
I think Mel meant Lexi. I think she was talking about Lexi.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Lexi is signed up for BBA. Sam is not, but I'm going to write them both an email just so that it's fair, if that's all right. If that makes sense.
Okay. Other thoughts on that issue? Don't see anybody. So the next item would be items for future agendas. And of course, at any time, if you think of something, let either me or the vice chair, Dick Dale, or the clerk, David Chandler, know, and we will try to get it on the agenda. But does anybody have anything right now they want to put on the next, either the next agenda or some future agenda? Ben.
So this would be a perhaps future agenda item. But I listened in on a there's an Act One committee, which is the equity and what is it? Equity and social equity in schools. I can't remember what the exact name of the act was, but the committee that came out of that is just made the recommendations back to the legislature around curricular adaptations and education quality standards and a few other things. But in the last meeting, they actually had a presentation from the Vermont School Board Association on what different school boards are doing around equity policy. And it was interesting to listen in on that policy and hear sort of the different descriptions of where equity fits in required policies and recommended policies, and at the sort of the different levels. And it got me to be thinking about what our policies are related to equity and where it fits, where equity actually fits in terms of policy versus just in terms of what our operational definition of equity is, which is what we spent time on, a year and a half ago or so, and then just revised it this fall. But there is I don't believe and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we have an equity policy per se. We have a working definition. We don't have a policy, and there is a recommended policy that they have put out, the Vermont School Board Association has put out, that a number of school districts have adopted, that puts it up at the policy level. So it holds us accountable to equity, to operationalizing our definition of equity in all different facets of what we do as a board and what's happening in the schools. And I would love for us to take that up as a board, what it would mean to adopt an equity policy or some version thereof. I think it's in the recommended policy section, it's code C29 as I'm looking at it here. So it's, I would put it in the chat, but that's not I don't think that's public record. So that's just verbally telling you where it is on the School Board Association site. So I would love to see us look at that in a future meeting if others are interested in taking that up.
Jim, thumbs up. Okay. Seems to me if we have a definition of equity, it would be appropriate to have a policy that uses it. Yeah, Melanie? Okay. I see Mark nodding. Yep. Okay. Anything else for a future agenda? All right. Again, if you think of something in the meantime, just let either David or Dick or me know. Let's see. Back to a public comment, but it has a sub-item board recognition, which I'm not.
That's me. But we can start with public comment and then you can turn to me.
Okay. All right. Celeste, any of the YouTube folks trying to comment?
No.
Okay. And there's at least one number I don't recognize here. If you are public and would like to comment, you've got 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes at your disposal. Feel free to unmute and comment.
Hi, this is Anita Sheldon. I was just listening in for election information.
Hi, Anita.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Did you get what you wanted?
She did.
You know what? I played it safe either way, and we were prepared either way.
Okay.
So now I know the direction you guys are headed in. We are headed in hopefully the same direction, and we'll get this job done.
Excellent. Thanks, Anita.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for everything. Have a great night.
Thank you.
So for those of you who don't know, Anita is the town clerk for Manchester. So they were one, obviously a large town who were waiting to see what we did.
Yep.
No?
Mel?
Hey, I'm really sorry to jump back. But I did just look over the list of places that we had to contact, and it doesn't look like anybody is contacting the Manchester Library or Select Board. Have any of you anticipated doing that or plan to do that?
Looks like
I'll do
John.
it.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
I was just trying to find that list. What's the name of that document?
TNG Public Engagement.
Okay.
And it looks like you just signed onto it.
Yep.
Maybe. Jim's on there.
Mhm.
Let me know if you can't find it, and I'm happy to share it with you again or send you a link.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Melanie.
So January is School Board Recognition Month. And so you all should have received an email that gives you a pair of socks. And nothing beats a board member with cozy, warm feet in January in Vermont. So wear them well. And I told Bob, I said, oh gosh, this is not going to be easy for me. So I just want to express my gratitude to all of you. You have been an incredible board and such a huge support for me. And I don't need a month to express that to you. And I try to tell you how much I appreciate just your support. I use the phrase, you're probably going to see it a couple of places, but you have really been the wind beneath my sails getting through these 6-7 months. I don't know how many months. And the appreciation I have for you as a board and your focus on education and our alignment in beliefs and philosophies and values for our kids is, I just couldn't ask for anything more. And, some days I wonder if I would be able to get through the way I'm getting through if it weren't for you. And I really firmly believe that to be true. I wouldn't be having the success I am without all of you. And so please appreciate and understand the heartfelt appreciation I have for you. And I look forward to the rest of the year with you by my side. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the footnote and for your thanks.
The way you started that, Randy, I thought you were about to say you were going to leave. So I'm really glad you were going to say.
Yipes.
Surprise!
that whole "this will be really hard for me to say" intro about had my heart in my chest.
No, it's just when when you're feeling something just so deeply and authentically, sometimes it's hard to just let that go. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
Are we ready to reflect on our norms? Which are, get back to page 2, just take a moment to look them over and see whether you think we are on the right track here.
I would like to say something, and that is, after hearing that sublime comment, I'm going to make one that's ridiculous. I have my socks from Darn Tough, and they are wonderful, and I could use another pair. So if any of you is not inclined to use your permit, just let me know. I'll use as many as there are sitting around, because don't waste it. It's pretty wonderful.
Okay, so David says sock it to him. All right.
Well, also we had a VSBA board meeting the other day, and the socks came up and all, and so it's really the VSBA folks working with Darn Tough, and they've been so fabulous that the suggestion was made that they really like it when you take a picture of your socks and upload it and all. So as a thanks, give them a little free advertising and a little appreciation there.
We're on Instagram.
Yep.
Any place, any social media.
Okay. Everybody reasonably satisfied that we have followed our norms this time? Anything we've messed up on here? Okay. Our next meeting then is February 2nd. Is there anything else that we need to take care of tonight? Then
I
there's,
move for adjournment.
thank you, Dick. Dick moves to adjourn. Is there a second? Seconded by David. All those in favor of adjourning, please raise your hand. Anybody opposed, raise your hand. Passes. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.